Welcome to Channel Your Passion for Sustainability into a Career in Nutrition, hosted by the Planetary Health Collective and the Conscious Merchant. Today's event will be hosted by Aitan Salahi, founder of the Planetary Health Collective, Mary Purdy, integrative and eco-dietitian and director of education at the Planetary Health Collective, and Bretta Alstrom, registered dietitian and director of operations at the Planetary Health Collective. And a huge thank you to our sponsor, The Conscious Merchant. Without them, we're not able to bring events like this to you for free. So head to their website to shop their products and use the code PHC10 for 10% off your order. We would also love for you to fill out this survey for a chance to win a gift basket from The Conscious Merchant. The Planetary Health Collective is a movement to mitigate climate change and nourish human health by leveraging the unique role of food and nutrition professionals in the fight. Our mission is to activate, incubate, and elevate leadership potential for food and nutrition professionals who are determined to use their practice and platforms to cultivate a more just, regenerative, and climate-resilient future for all. Our vision is to provide an unparalleled opportunity for food and nutrition professionals to channel their unique passions and skills to counter the climate crisis with the intersectionality, urgency, and persistence needed to succeed. We learn and teach how to connect the dots between food, climate, labor, racial, and health justice, and provide educational opportunities to instill these notions among food and nutrition leaders. We welcome community members of all experience levels to foster their unique skills and passions in the fight and think creatively about how each and every individual can help to create and support just, resilient, and healthy food systems. We take action alongside our allies to forge the path forward for systemic change in food and climate at a local, state, and federal level. Now I am pleased to introduce our panelists. We'll start with Laura Lapp, Vice President of Sustainability and Culinary Services for Chartwells Higher Education, Daphne Altema-Johnson, from the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, Eecole Copen, Sustainable Food Programs Coordinator at Oregon Health Sciences University, Tambra Raye Stevenson, founder of Women Advancing Nutrition, Dietetics, and Agriculture, Nicole Arcilla, Wellness and Sustainability Manager for Restaurant Associates, and Stacia Clinton, Chief Programs Officer for Healthcare Without Harm. So without further ado, we will jump into our panel discussion.
So I thank them all for joining us tonight, for taking the time to speak with us about what they have done and are doing. And we'll start off the evening by hearing first from Daphne Altema-Johnson. So take it away, Daphne.
Thank you, Mary. I apologize. Allergies are pretty bad in Maryland at the moment. If you have allergies, and it's not really good. So thank you. It is my pleasure to be here. I am a program officer, as Mary stated, at the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, where my work really focuses mainly on diet, nutrition, and sustainability issues. And a good percentage of what I do, how I spend my time, is spent really providing support to the Meatless Monday campaign, which some of you may have heard about. But additionally, I get the unique opportunity as well to be a preceptor to dietetic students from Hopkins, which is always a treat for me, right? Because I get to chat with them about the cultural, fair, and equitable aspect of achieving sustainable diets, which is an area that is often not covered in some of the dietetic programs. At least that's what I've seen when I look at some of the curriculum, and that may varies as well based on what your emphasis is and when you start your program. So that's who I am. But I want to tell you guys a little bit about the center and what the center do. So the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future is an interdisciplinary academic center, which is based within the School of Public Health in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering. I have the opportunity to work with some of you that actually are on the call. We work with students, educators, researchers, policymakers, advocacy organizations, as well as communities. And all these people that we work with, right, with Johns Hopkins, so they have expertise, and you name it, we have it. Food animal production, seafood, food system, climate change, food policy, food equity, food waste, food resilience, food systems. Since we are in Maryland, we do some work as well, and Baltimore, right? To food system change in Baltimore, diet, health, and planetary boundaries. And so what the center do, we use the concept, our work is mostly driven by the concept that public health, food production, and the ecosystem are deeply interrelated. And that to understand, we strive to understand this relationship. And we believe that this understanding this relationships is actually crucial in understanding a livable future. So when we talk about, the food system, we think about healthy, sustainable food system and what is required to ensure, right, availability, equitable access to healthy nutrient food. What we do know, right, we know the food system, we know what it composed. So we think about a food system that is basically, food production, processing, distribution, consumption, and all of that is integrated into the environment, the economic, social, and nutritional health, right? All of that makes up the food system. But what we do know, and what COVID has shown, is that the food system is broken. And so we know with all its elements, people, technology, input, environmental economics, as I said, that all of those are related to the production and the processing and the distribution. And so what we assume that to ensure that everything is equitable, what we do know for sure is there's not a linear path to that, not a linear solution. So the food system requires system thinking because it's complex. And so that's what we do. We work to understand those complex issues. We know that there are multiple factors that are in the system and they all are connected. We know that we have to engage, we have to align the different factors that are at play so we can bring about solutions. I'm gonna give you an example. When I said that there is a lot of things, I'm a simple choice. For example, I knew I had this thing to do today, and I know I have 2 school-age children, and for me, it's 8 o'clock right now, which is around like homework bedtime. But I had to think about dinner because there's also dance before this. So the choice that I made, the food choice, the dinner that was at the table today, I had to think about, is it convenient? I had to think about the price, time, environment. So all those things goes into just a simple, choice as making food, as putting food on the table. So you can imagine when you look at the whole food system, that it takes a lot more. So the challenge that we have, that we try to solve at this center, is how do you achieve that? How do we make sure that we have we achieve sustainable and nutritious diets for all, that is best, right, culturally, that is ecologically sound, that is healthy, affordable, accessible, and fair. And we do know one thing that's for sure, is that affordable diets are not necessarily healthy diets. And we know that certain groups are affected more by environment, by resources, wherever they are. So that's what I do. And that's what the center do. That's what we try to do. And I am fortunate to be part of that and to be involved in trying to create like this equitable food system that all of our staff, all of our colleagues that we work to do at the Center for a Livable Future. Later on, I'll give you like I'll tell you how I got to where what lead me to this path. But basically that's what I do within the Center for a Livable Future.
Wonderful, Daphne. Thank you so much. I look forward to having some more dialogue with you about some of the details of what got you to where you are today. So thank you so much, Daphne. Let's move on to our next speaker. And that is Nicole Arcilla. Nicole, feel free to take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Arcilla. I'm a registered dietitian here in the DC metro area. So like most dietitians, I started off my career in a clinical setting. However, I didn't really have a strong love for it. So a few years later, I eventually found myself working for Compass Group, so in a more food service setting. I actually started off in Chartwells higher ed, and I was a campus dietitian at a university in Maryland, so not too far from Johns Hopkins, actually. So my role as a campus dietitian there, I primarily focused on wellness and helping students with allergies or other dietary needs and navigating that, and while adjusting to college life and being on their own for the first time. But I was also lucky enough to be part of a team that was introducing sustainability initiatives to the campus, such as installing a reusable container system, also introducing the concept of hyper-local food when we installed a hydroponic garden, and really got to show them what that process is like, and actually creating some dishes and special events out of those vegetables that we were growing just right in the dining hall. Now in my current position, as I was said earlier, I'm the Wellness and Sustainability Manager for Restaurant Associates, or RA, and I'm now located at one of our accounts in DC. So while I still, of course, work in the realm of wellness, I am also a lot more involved in sustainability, and I'm applying it more in a more corporate setting. So the initiatives are also on a slightly larger scale as well than what I was doing in a university level. So with Chartwells, I was really more so focusing on the farm to fork process, and education was really more consumer facing. So it was really more directed towards our students and also any staff and faculty that we had on campus. And now with RA, I'm focusing on really similar things, but I'm going beyond that too now. And admittedly, it was a bit of a learning curve for me. So it's not just farm to fork process anymore. I'm also working with our retail team and culinary staff to look at the materials we're using, items that we're selling in our retails. Could we make that a bit more environmentally friendly? And then we're also looking at how can we encourage behavioral change with our back of house staff, our culinary staff, and even our front of house staff. And then currently, during this pandemic, and while we're all still working from home, getting ready for reopening, I've also been working very heavily with our clients and their own initiatives for their work setting, such as the biggest one we have right now is joining the Cool Food Pledge, where we are pledging, along with other signatories, to lower our greenhouse gas emissions by about 25% by 2030. And we're actually heading in the very, very good direction. And we've already made a good headway there. And then, of course, this week being Earth Week, my chef and I participated in a virtual Earth Week event with our clients, where we also hosted a Root to STEM cooking demo, which was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot from our chef that day too. And then next week, just a little plug, we're also company-wide. We are getting ready for Stop Food Waste Day on April 28th. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicole. And it's so great to hear that somebody that I know has actually put forth the Cool Food Pledge. I've been talking about that for the last year. So it's great to hear that you actually have made good on that. And I recommend that our listeners take a look at the Cool Food Pledge and see what's out there. And if you belong to an organization that might be able to sign on to that pledge, it's a great one to sign on to. So thank you, Nicole, so much. We appreciate what you're doing. Let's move on to our next speaker. This is Stacia Clinton with Healthcare Without Harm. Stacia, take it away.
Thanks, Mary. Hi there. And I actually think I have a couple slides. So if you have those up, you can move on to that one. So just to say hello to everyone, okay. So I actually work with the global nonprofit organization Healthcare Without Harm. And our organization was formed about 25 plus years ago at the intersection of human and environmental health. And it was a recognition that there were environmental injustices throughout the world that were causing harm to our health and to our communities, and that there was a major paradox in that our healthcare sector, who were sort of providers of our health, were actually major contributors to that through their purchasing, their practices, their investments, and so on. So Healthcare Without Harm brought together community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, public health, healthcare, clinician advocacy organizations together in an effort to address systemic issues that were at the intersection of human and environmental health. And since then, we've grown to represent over 36,000 hospitals and healthcare facilities globally in 65 countries. We have about 1 in 3 hospitals in the US are members of our network. And really the work that we do cuts across any aspect of healthcare operations. So we look at the ways hospitals can first sort of transform their own internal operations to mitigate their own impact. how they can connect with community-based partners and organizations and impacted communities to transform and help to build community health and resilience. And then we also work to sort of activate the healthcare sector, clinicians, administrators, and others to be active in policy at the local, state, federal, or even global level. We're very excited and active in advocacy around the exciting developments today by the Biden administration at the Climate Summit. So just to talk a little bit about how we do our work, Healthcare Without Harm, as I mentioned, has a global reach, and we convene hospitals and healthcare facilities, health ministries together through something called the Global Green and Healthy Hospitals Network. It's a virtual platform where hospitals can connect with each other, other NGO partners, other allies, governmental entities that are all working towards a similar goal. And then in the US here, we have a membership-based organization called Practice Green Health, where a lot of the initiatives and sort of systemic, sort of levers that we tap through Healthcare Without Harm, we build best practices and scale them through Practice Green Health with how-to guidance, peer-to-peer learning, and other education. And then we have a subset of our network called Green Health Exchange, which we recognize that a major asset that healthcare has is their purchasing, to be able to leverage how they purchase, what they purchase, and how they influence the marketplace to make systemic change. So in my role as Chief Program Officer, I oversee all of our programmatic strategy across all of those areas that we touch upon. So climate and health, safer chemicals, institutional procurement, and then our healthy food and healthcare program. And actually, I'm new to this role just within the last 18 months. And prior to that, my role was actually as the US National Director for the Healthy Food and Healthcare Program. And I think that's the area you'll probably be most interested in. But that work in particular was bringing what we called, and I know it's a common frame, but for us, we help to digest the environmental nutrition concept for healthcare. So it's a way in which we helped them to evolve from the traditional concepts of nutrition, looking at calories, minerals, nutrients, and so on, and to really look at food from a broader lens of the socioeconomic impacts and also the health impacts all along the supply chain from production, transport to consumption, and so on. And so digesting that, we do that through research and advocacy. We do that through training and education. We stimulate innovation projects that are happening that help to stimulate new models for food systems in a local, regional, or national context. And then we look at strategies that are really at the intersection of, as we mentioned, human and environmental health. And so we have a very robust effort in collaborating with others, like Meatless Mondays has been a critical partner of ours in helping to champion things like plant-based menus and looking to how we can build a more diverse, localized food system. So happy to dig into any of our projects as we get a little further on, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Dacia. It's great to hear about some of those initiatives you guys are putting into play and practice and really transforming the healthcare system. You are true leaders in this field, so thank you for what you're doing. All right, and sorry about the slide mix-up. We'll see if we can get access to those slides and at least send them out to our listeners when we have the opportunity. So apologies for that. They're probably somewhere in our stash here. Thanks so much. So let's move on to our next speaker, Eecole Copen. If you would take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mary. And I can't say enough good things about Healthcare Without Harm and Stacio's work in there. So thank you to them. I might talk about them later. And I'm going to be echoing a little bit of what Daphne talked about and waxing a little philosophical here. I currently work at Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, Oregon, as their Sustainable Food Programs Coordinator. I tell people that my job is to grow the infrastructure of a sustainable food system in the hospital setting. So what does this mean? We, as a society, have become very attached to modern conveniences and the efficient functioning of and supply of the resources we use on a day-to-day basis, like water, food, electricity, gas, etc. Many of these systems rely on large-scale entities to make the use of these resources seamless, to the point where most of us take them for granted. When I think of infrastructure, I imagine that each of those resources has its own giant scaffold with many parts that function to make it a fairly solid structure on which we can depend. So as we all know, in my metaphor, the scaffolding that creates our food system, like Daphne talked about, is farmers, is one of the pillars, food processors, transportation, outlets for sale or consumption of food, and of course the consumers. I like to think that the platforms that are created between the pillars that we depend on for security and stability are made from the human connections that happen between these pillars. And interestingly, the nature of the large scale structures and the focus that's purely on the bottom line and efficiency makes it so that the larger scaffolds may have actually less human input and connection, while the smaller scaffolds have more inputs and more connections and are perhaps even more resilient, like we saw play out in the pandemic, where our reliance on these larger structures saw gaping holes like the closing of meat factories or aluminum can shortages. We start to see where the larger scaffolds have vulnerabilities, whereas CSA farmers suddenly had wait lists and local meat was some of the most stable source of meat available. So much of how scaffoldings are set up is the way humans want to construct them. And I think institutions are linchpins in these larger structures, as they provide much of the drive for what gets produced and how. If the demand is focused on low cost, they're going to participate in creations that are meant to be driven by cheap food, which often comes at the expense of people and planet, which we all know. And if they demanded that the health of human beings were the focus, they would create structures that protected human lives over the bottom line profits. If they demanded that food was grown where it built topsoil and nourished the earth with thriving microbial communities, they would support ways of growing food that excludes chemicals that kill life in the soil and water and air. And I really believe that when the demand is backed with real financial support and commitment, people are willing to get creative. So the bottom line for me over the past 15 years has been, how do I convince the people in charge of the decision-making in these larger institutions to demand something besides the bottom line and be willing to bridge the communication between the larger and the smaller scaffolds? And also, I've realized that the people in the smaller systems have to be willing to make some changes to their practices to participate in the larger systems without sacrificing their values and their quality. People make decisions. People can change the way our systems are set up. And sometimes in institutional settings, it just takes one person with enough authority to demand or make a change. And it always surprises me when suddenly a change happens after years of waiting. I've also realized that this change can come from a group of empowered food service workers. So how can we as dietitians help create that change in someone's mind or heart? I would say making, and this will be some of the later talks too, but making it an easy choice, creating access by encouraging relationships, making it personal, create repeat opportunities to experience the benefits besides the bottom line, and empower people, give them a platform to stand on so their voices are heard. Some of the ways that I've done this is creating farmers market at the hospital. Any chance that we have to participate in a healthy foods initiative, we do our best to be involved. Participating in Earth Day celebrations, highlighting local farmers that we work with in marketing and getting our marketing department online. And start with like low-hanging fruits, things that people are interested in. Like at my institution, it's a hospital. And so we are focused on the use of antibiotics in the food system. So things that people are interested in. So basically making the work visible and appealing so that others are attracted to it and feel more connected to it. So I hope that gives you a little slice of what it is I've done. And by the way, the picture is one of our family farms that's at our farmers market, Pablo Munoz farm. Thank you.
Fantastic, Eecole. So great to hear about what you're doing. And I'm just so delighted that you brought up the topic of soil and soil health. As we know, soil health is going to play and is playing and has played a huge role in human health. And that's a terrific area where we as dietitians and nutrition professionals can really connect those dots between how the environment and our current agricultural system is affecting soil health, which will ultimately affect human health. So love that you're bringing that into the picture. Let's move on to our next speaker. This is Laura Lapp. Laura, feel free to take it away. And other speakers feel free to turn off your videos while others are speaking, just so people can not get too distracted by your vibrant vitality.
Thanks so much, Mary. Eecole, I feel like you were digging through my brain as you were speaking there just a moment ago, because so much of what you said absolutely resonated with me. I actually started my career as I am a registered dietitian, of course, but I started as a regional dietitian in food service. Prior to that, I was actually in clinical nutrition. And I've been with Chartwells Higher Education. We do contract food service management for colleges and universities across the country. I've been with the organization for 15 years. And Eecole, to your earlier point, I feel like I'm finally now in a place where I really can drive change. And it does feel like we've been just kind of making baby steps all along the past 15 years, and we're finally really picking up steam and really driving some change. And there's some super exciting things that are going on right now within our space. A few years ago, we launched a program called Fuel, and it's really more of a wellness-based program, but it's all focused around functional benefits of foods. And one of the opportunities that I saw with that was that we could start from that place where our students were with some interest, a little bit of interest in sustainability at that time, and a lot of interest in wellness at that time. But knowing that we were building this from the ground up, we could focus on making sure that those products were as sustainable as possible. So going into the whole culinary development phase of it, we didn't just dive in and start creating recipes. We really thoughtfully considered what kinds of ingredients do we want to use. And a lot of it is whole foods, plant-based, a little bit of, minimally processed products, very little meat, and a lot of flavor. Our culinary staff has really just taken over the whole thing. They understand the guardrails now from a nutrition perspective, and they're all in on the whole sustainability aspect of it too. So because it's so plant-based, it gives us a really good opportunity to pull in a lot of local produce options, a lot of local grains. Anywhere we have those opportunities, we can pull those in. Just speaking of plant-based, that's been one of our really growing initiatives. We were one of the first organizations that even offered vegan menu options when I first started years ago, but it was very niche. We are expanding it so quickly now that we really are having a hard time just keeping up with the demand. And one of the most exciting things that we've started doing, I've been pushing and trying so hard to get a whole plant-based resident dining operation going for a couple of years now. And I finally got a couple of takeovers. Just this past spring, we did a couple of, up at Colgate University and at Northeastern University, we did some dining hall takeovers where every single menu option in the entire facility was plant-based. We used a combination of whole foods, a few specialty items that we had brought in, and some specialty vendors that we're working with who are in this plant-based space. And I'm so excited with some of the minimally processed plant-based options that are coming out now that can really expand that experience for students. And the feedback that we have gotten from them has just blown us all away. It's gone over far more successfully than we could have even hoped. And our culinary teams had so much fun pulling it together at the same time. And so we're going to be able to leverage what we've done at those two campuses this spring and pull those in and really start to expand it in the fall. It's super thrilling to see all of that happen. Part of my job, because I do integrate, and I oversee all of our culinary staff across the country, and it's part of our program development. So we get to set those culinary standards. It's been really, I think, a game changer to be able to integrate the culinary application with the sustainability and the wellness. When I first started, wellness kind of had its own little bucket, vegan had its own little bucket. And then culinary was off doing their own thing. And, this was 15 years ago, but we've gotten to a space now, and and it took a few years for the team to really embrace it. But we've gotten to this space now where the culinarians are thinking about the wellness aspect of something and the sustainability aspect of something before I even have to ask at this point. It's just become second nature to them when they start to put a recipe together, which I think has had such a huge impact on everything that we're serving in our operations. As part of that, I do get to work with a lot of vendors. I think that's one of the most fun aspects of my job. And I can't recall, I think it was Eecole who mentioned, working with some of those smaller providers and helping them find ways and opportunities to get their products into our operations. It takes a lot of legwork on our side because so much of it is so localized. There are very few that we could pull a product in and leverage it across the entire organization. So we have to do a lot of legwork at each one of our campuses to pull in some of those products and really, bring them to the forefront of what we're doing in every campus. But that's part of what makes each experience so unique and special. And we're really working on bringing more local in. I can't share a whole lot here, but I have to share that we're starting into a brand new pilot program, again, up in the Northeast with a third-party organization to help us really pull in a lot more local. It's gotten so much excitement just throughout the organization so far. We're going to do a pilot this fall and this summer, and then I know it's going to go well, so we'll be able to leverage that across the country and really blow some things out, really focusing on getting more local produce into our students and making sure that we're also really prioritizing some of those disenfranchised, smaller vendors and making sure that we're getting healthy things. And then Eecole, you again touched on soil health, and something that an initiative we just started this past spring that, again, I'm very excited about is our regenerative agriculture program. So, we have this idea that we need to start using some of these products, these crops that are used in regenerative ag. They need a place to go so that we're not contributing to more food waste and increasing greenhouse gases. So our culinary teams can take those products and turn them into really amazing recipes. And so we started launching those this past spring. They're all labeled. We're educating students. Nicole mentioned that she was one of our campus dietitians. And, it's such a challenge in a really good way to try to figure out how to get all of this pulled together and shared with students who are eager to understand, they're eager to be involved, they're excited to be part of it and excited to experience a lot of it. So it's, my day-to-day job is something different every single day. It's amazing, it's fun. There's so many challenges and opportunities, and it's just, I'm really happy to be here and excited to share with so many of the new dietitians that are here with us this evening. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's just fantastic how much breadth you're covering in just working in one sector here. And I love this idea of dining hall takeovers. It sounds kind of exciting and radical, like a little mini revolution in a dining hall. So thank you for the work you're doing. Let's bring on our final speaker, Tambra Raye Stevenson. Please take it away. Thanks so much. And if the other speakers, if you can turn off your videos for now, and then we'll have you put them back on when we come in for the final panel discussion.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am delighted to be a part of tonight's conversation and hopefully just continue to encourage wherever you are on your journey to know that we need more food fighters and we see food as an extension of freedom. And so in celebration of I would like to say Mama Earth's Day, it really is a time to reconnect to, for me and many of us, our roots. And being a Virgo, also an earth sign, about what it means to be grounded and rooted into the soil, the source of life, the source of food, the source of health and healing, and why we celebrate this day in having a panel of all women. And I think for the work that we do at WANDA, having that intersectional lens, that feminist lens with a civil rights focus is critical in understanding that it truly is a fight for peace, a fight for food, and we want to share more about our work. Next slide. So this is a preview of a reimagining what we see at WANDA, that we are Green's goddesses. We are the cultural keepers. We are the meal healers. We are what the community has been waiting for. And for so long, our history has not shown that, because colonial tactics of erasure and exploitation and extraction have been used as tools to divide and conquer communities and culture in our cuisines. Next slide. And so we have an expression that our trauma is not our inheritance. Our existence is the resistance, and our food is our superpower. Given the history, next slide, and the journey that we have come so far on the foundation of our ancestors, next, we wanted to highlight that in 2019, it represented the 400th year of the remembrance of the first set of Africans arriving to the colonial Virginia, to not initially to be slaves, but ultimately to end up working in agriculture. The seeds of the food system were planted far along. The wage-based economy was rooted in the impact and the clash of cultures in America. And so we remember that. We remember that by returning to the roots that have been attempted to be severed. We see the wisdom within the food and we honor that. And then we also look to restoring our health and understanding that when we launched in 2016, that justice was a part of the menu, and that we have a mission of growing a new generation of food heroes from farm to health across the diaspora by transforming our lives and our families through our food. Next. And so we honor those who've come before us. Fannie Lou Hamer, who used food as a tool, mainly helping to establish pig farms as a way to encourage the need to feed families that were suffering from food insecurity. I went to school at Tufts University for my master's in public health, focused on health communication. I'm from Oklahoma and grew up in Texas, where I studied nutrition at Oklahoma State University. I have family in Mississippi and in the South, and trace my heritage back to the Fulanis in Nigeria. And for me, making the connection to the land and the agricultural legacy was critical to embrace. Georgia Gilmore, she used to feed those in the civil rights movement in Alabama. And we know Harriet for helping to fight for liberation for African people, but also using food as a way to help heal our soldiers who were fighting in the Civil War. Next. And so Wanda for us is an everyday food hero. She doesn't have to have a degree in her title, because we know there are structural inequities that block people from gaining the access to credentials and opportunities that create social positionings in this country. And so those food heroes are the unsung hidden figures in our food system, to our nanas, our mamas, our aunties, those who grow food in their balconies, on their community gardens, in their backyards, like my mom, and so many who find ways to help heal their community. Next. And so together we represent a sisterhood of the soil. We represent the strength, the resiliency, the confidence, the compassion that has not been amplified in the media intentionally, what it means to be a Black woman in this country. And so our collective stories are critical, because we are culinary creators and should be rightfully build pipelines and platforms to encourage the next generation. Next. And so that is why our mission is revolutionizing health and culture of food through the power of women and girls. This is important because we have shifted this idea of what it means to own our divine feminine power. But this is what we embrace in building this movement of women through education, advocacy, and innovation. Next. And so our expression is all we need is already within our culture, our community, our cuisine, within ourselves. Is so critically important to know when society says everything that you need is outside of you, you must pay for the things that you need. When literally, when we think about seeds and terminator seeds, how we understand the importance of symbiotic relationships with the earth, the need to regenerate our crops, the need to understand the relationships that we have with planet and people, and it cannot be at the cost of profit. Next. And so we are taking on the issue of nutrition equity, and we are educating and advocating and innovating. And nutrition equity is understanding the power to the people, the plants, and the palates in addressing the structural challenges, not simply creating Band-Aid programs that only educate, but not actually advocate and change through policy. Next. So how do we do this? One, we started off with the Where's Wanda book series, a bilingual plant-based book series available in English and in Hausa for the first time ever, African languages highlighting, showing our girls as food heroes who are helping to heal their communities of diabetes and heart disease and cancer through the power of their heritage foods. We are in the process of developing more books in Amharic and in Swahili, and also a coloring book that are all 50% done at this point. Next. We've also launched the Wanda Academy during the middle of COVID pandemic, teaching women healthy food access, connecting them to Black women farms, also providing them with self-care plans and developing recipes that they're remixing and bringing them a part of a cookbook. Next. Tomorrow, we're presenting our work on the Academy through the DC Health Communication Conference held by George Mason University, highlighting the work that we found and how the importance of using sisterhood as a means to build community around food security is the heart of what we do. Next. And so we look for everyone to be involved, to know that if we want to go fast, we go alone, but if we want to go further, we go together. We are maximizing the power of Wanda and making a positive impact in our communities. Next. And so we are inviting people to support our Food Hero Freedom Fund. We have closed the applications for the Wanda Fellow. We will soon be developing a Wanda Endowed Scholarship that will support a woman in ag, nutrition, dietetics at Oklahoma State in perpetuity, with the idea of building those pipelines. Next. And so that fund is recognizing that as we have slightly gone over the 2% mark of Black dietitians and nutritionists, the reality is there's been a decline by 11% of BIPOC communities going into the field. That needs to change. We also have land loss issues. And so when we think about there being a war in this country, it is seen through the lens of food. And so Wanda represents the future of what food should look like. And we hope that as we grow this new crop together, we help address the diversity, equity, inclusion, and sense of belonging that's so desperately needed in the field. Next. And so that fellowship addresses some of the things that happen during the dietetic internship process, where you lack mentorship, you lack the funding, and you have the experience, but is it something that truly connects to your spirit? Next. So if you look to engage with us, we are available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, you can set an appointment up at Culinary, but we are grateful for the opportunity to present with you today and answer any questions that you have. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much, Tambra. And thank you so much for bringing, especially on this Mother Earth Day, the cultural component, the spiritual component, the healing component, and the component of racial justice, which we know is so often neglected in the conversation around nutrition, especially in the dietetics profession. So PHC, we know that food justice is climate justice, is racial justice. So thank you for continuing to highlight that. We appreciate it. Please, everyone, put on your videos now, if you would, all the speakers. I would love to continue the dialogue here with everybody. Did we lose people? Are folks still available? Hopefully our other speakers are still around. I'm not seeing them. Can someone give me a thumbs up if you are still here? Yay, there you are, great. So one thing that I think has been really apparent, and maybe we can stop the slides for a second so we can actually see everybody. If you would do that, I-10, thank you so much. One thing that I think is really apparent is the incredible amount of information and access to resources that all of our panelists laid out for us. And I think many of us who are in dietetics programs or learning public health initiatives or in those kinds of programs aren't really getting this kind of training. And so I would be very curious from all of you panelists, what it was that helped you in your education, what was critical for you to understand and know in your knowledge base to get to where you are today. And Daphne, I'd love to start with you, since I know you had a little bit of a different path to get to where you are.
Yeah, my path was, yes, exactly, a little bit different, because I started out about 15, maybe longer than that, Lord. I am getting old, but that's not, that's not the key. But I started as an epidemiologist. I received my MPH from GW in health policy. And I started as an epidemiologist working in infectious diseases, specifically immunizations. And throughout that, I started doing global health work, where I moved throughout the University of Maryland, managing NIH training grant, working in HIV/AIDS, and worked there for, did that, traveling to Africa and looking and learning about the cultures, about the people, individuals. And then eventually during that time, I started working my BA as well in management organization. And I started working in cancer research, educating, doing outreach in Baltimore City, and faith-based nonprofits, faith-based, a place where we can get at the individuals that were most at risk. I think it's during these two interactions that I started realizing, okay, there's something different here. And I do have a bachelor's in nutrition. And then, but a recession happened in 2008, and I started doing outcomes research as it relates to chronic disease, chronic illness. And I worked as a senior epidemiologist for the state of Maryland. It was probably during that tenure when I started doing site visits at the local jurisdictions, really assessing funding that we had to give them. And one incident specifically, I was in Southern Maryland, and I was looking at someone doing really nutrition education outreach. And I looked, and it was fascinating that the education and the information, the nutrition counseling that was happening, it was someone from an Indian descent and the other one Hispanic. They couldn't relate. They couldn't, you're talking when dietetics, they teach you about, listening, active listening, thinking about the cultural component. And that was missing. And it's something that I started paying attention to, attending conferences and so on. There is really not a lot of diversity in dietetics. And I believe, so I decided, I said, I love this so much. And I am from Haiti. And for us, we believe in bush medicine, and we believe food is medicine. End of story, right? So I believe that. I believe we have longevity for a country that is considered third world country, etc. But we do have longevity in our family, and I believe it's food. I believe that is medicine. And so, because for a need to create diversity, for the need for relatability, I said, okay, I am a people's person. I love food, but there is not enough of me out there. When you look at chronic illnesses and those that are most affected, right? Communities that are marginalized, the people that are doing the education doesn't look like them. So I went back to school and get my RDN and get a degree in dietetics. And really, I think my path, learning about the diseases, infections, and so on, but working with people, knowing how data work and knowing how policy work kind of give me this unique angle when I'm thinking about sustainability, when I'm thinking about nutrition, knowing what you need to do. And when you're working with the researchers, with the policymakers, to know what you need to say, what needs to be there for them to understand, but to speak to our people specifically, those of colors and low income, in a way that doesn't discriminate against them, that understand culturally where they're coming from, that understand sustainability. Part of it, yes, is, you know, the environment, the ecological aspect, but part of it is affordability, part of it is equitable, part of it is the fair aspect of it, that a lot of times, like I said before when I talked, is missing when you think about dietetic students. So I like to bring that in. Like when you're thinking about people, you have to think about, no matter how you look like, about race, what color, you know, who's cooking the food? Who is buying the food? You know, how do they respond to food? Do they fellowship around food? Some of the things that I think all of the panelists have mentioned. I think so that's really was my path, you know, to sustainability, to diets, to nutrition. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to ask actually Stacia and Eecole specifically. I would love to know, you know, you came into a position here, and obviously you've been in these positions for a number of years, but what do you feel like prepared you for the type of role and the types of the ways that you're engaging in your own role at where you're working?
Sure, I'll dig in first. You know, for me, I got into the path of dietetics because I felt at my core personally that food was a foundation for our health, and that food is very personal on multiple levels. And so when I was going through the curriculum, I used every opportunity to use internships or learning experiences that were non-traditional. So I found places where I could shadow. I worked at a food co-op, which back then was before Whole Foods. And I followed food distribution from a local farm. I remember talking there. I followed a nutritionist who had his own private practice and really practiced functional and alternative medicine. And so that helped to cultivate my interest and keep me going. And then when I got into the field, I took, you know, started off as a clinical nutrition manager and moved into food service, and just found disconnect with my values in the healthcare system. And so I took a sabbatical and actually worked in a yoga wellness retreat center that used to be very faith oriented. And I volunteered there for 3 months working in the food service, and learned at how a commercial kitchen could be run. At the time, it was 80% organic, which was unheard of, and local, and connected to the community, and grew on site. And I saw how a large institution could make that part of their entire operation. And it gave me new life into wanting to bring that back into healthcare. It wasn't long after that I couldn't sort of stay within the healthcare setting because of just the frustrations I was having and bumping up against some of those challenges. And thankful for people like Eecole who have that, you know, have been able to keep at it all this time and find these crevices to dig into. But I found going to, you know, sort of my CEU trainings, I went to a workshop where I heard someone from Healthcare Without Harm talk about the intersections of human and environmental health. And they were talking about it in the context of the Union Carbide pesticide disaster in India that had just demolished the community for generation after generation. And one of the things Healthcare Without Harm did was helped to form a clinic there that was built off of traditional medicines and traditional growing of food and herbs and so on, because the government had not taken any responsibility for that disaster. So the community itself did. And for me, that seemed more like healthcare. So that's just a bit about my path.
Excellent. Eecole, do you have other thoughts about educational opportunities or ways that you began to develop an expertise that helped you in your current role?
Oh gosh, well, whatever I did to have patience, because as Stacia said, staying in the hospital system, it has been really challenging and it takes a ton of patience. I did do an internship on a farm before I ever became a dietitian, which was awesome. It was Abundant Life Seed Foundation in Port Townsend, and learned a lot about seed saving. I learned a lot about soil, and I learned a lot about food and nourishment. And yeah, my love of food kind of grew out of that. And I always sought out alternative places to learn, like Bastyr University is where I got my master's in nutrition. And they had, cooking curriculums, whereas probably other nutrition masters don't have that. And they had a Whole Foods clinic, and so I think, it's just seeking out, you have to look for those things because they're not mainstream. The mainstream dietetic world is still all about micronutrients. And to me, it's such a narrow perspective of the food system. I really wish that more dietitians would do whole foods and more. There's more happening now. And there are a lot of really great articles that I will always give to my interns to read. Things like, oh gosh, now I'm blanking on some of the names. Like, anyway, another time, maybe I'll come up with, I have a list of resources, but there are some really great articles. And
we're going to
yeah.
highlight some tonight as well. So
Okay, great.
It'll be one of those.
Yeah, but that's basically it. Like just seeking those kinds of things out.
Wonderful. And I'm curious, I'm going to move along to a different question. Nicole and Laura, I'll throw this out there to you. When we're thinking of that concept of sustainability, and anyone is obviously able to recommend or able to answer this question, that concept of sustainability, right? We think of it, many of us think of it, I know PhD thinks of it as these 4 pillars or dimensions. So we're looking at sustainability as planetary or environmental health. We're looking at it, looking at human health and supporting human health. We're also looking at it through economic health. That's the workers being paid, food being accessible and affordable. And then lastly, those socioeconomic or sociocultural rather factors. So racial equity, the humane treatment of animals and workers. How does your work touch on all of those 4 pillars or those 4 dimensions? And if it doesn't, where do you see work that you're doing able to maybe incorporate some of those considerations?
I'll start. I probably touch on all 4 of those every single day in some way, shape, or form in things that I do, and quite often multiple pillars at the same time. There's so much to unpack with it that, gosh, I even find that a challenging question to answer just because there's so many pieces and components to it. When we're, and just to give you, one example, when we're building new recipes, we are thinking about the wellness pieces of those recipes. We are thinking about the authenticity of those recipes. If we're incorporating and infusing global flavors, we want to be extremely considerate of not taking something that's not part of our culture and misrepresenting it, but we do want to share some of those experiences, and so being respectful of all of that piece, thinking about where those ingredients are all coming from, thinking about how can I pull in something that might not be as profitable from a purchasing perspective, but we know that that's the right thing to do. And what do I need to do to persuade others to get them on board with moving those things forward? So all of those pieces come into play in one way, shape, or form, I think, in everything that we do, and every program that we pull together. It's always, all of it is always there, in the back of our minds as we're pulling these different pieces together.
Yeah, and to add to what Laura is saying, so what Laura is saying, we kind of touch on all of those things in our work, and I think that's what's so great about Compass Group is that just through the whole of our operations and initiatives, really, I think all 4 of those are really touched on. And I think too, what I'm very thankful for is that at my account, the World Bank Group is what my account is in DC. their whole organization is about ending world poverty. And so, and because our clients really drive our initiatives and what we're going to be involved with, so they kind of naturally also gravitate to sustainability from the perspective of, fairness for workers and their health, on top of what we're doing within food service, like our menu offerings, and also ensuring that our menu offerings, they're starting conversations of how it could be more environmentally friendly, but also at the same time having to touch on cultural sensitivity and making sure that we're not invalidating or minimizing those who might still be consuming what we wouldn't really perceive as beneficial to the environment. So it's, there's just a lot of different things going on, and that kind of just overlap with one task overlaps all the others. Yeah.
Excellent. It's that holistic and systems thinking. I have one last question, then we'll get to our questions from our various participants. But Tambra, I have a question for you. You talked about the incredible organization that you've headed up over the past number of years. And I know that you did not choose to become a dietitian, and it's great for us to be able to see people who are in the nutrition field that are not necessarily dietitians. That isn't necessarily a necessary path. And so I'm curious, what is a typical day like for you in the work that you are doing?
Thank you for the question. I will say that I've always believed in a path of healing, and I am a very creative person. And so initially I was a bio pre-med who switched over to nutrition and really was rooted in the science and being in the labs. Technically, I did go through the dietetic program, did the internship, took the exam. I have a perplexed relationship with the field, let's be real, okay? And so this is why I do the work of Wanda. I do wear the hat and the spirit of Harriet Tubman in the importance of the fighting the good fight of Dr. Creighton, Dr. Kumika, so many pioneering Black women in the field who may get their due, but we hope through the work that we do, they will. Because at the end of the day, now that I'm working on my PhD in media technology and democracy at American, I understand that the work of amplifying these messages is critical. And the need to democratize nutrition is critical. And they come together in helping to change the discourse, to ultimately change the policies that need to happen at not only the federal level, but the local level. And so for me, the position that I've put myself in, because I think what we have to understand is that one, as human beings, we have a mission and a soul completion journey. And we understand that for those who understand the importance of the environment and food, that intrinsically, there is something calling to spirit to why we must fight for the voiceless veggies, why we must be the ambassador of the pallets and the plates, and why we use and understand that power and how it connects to people. I think when we understand that, like I have, it can be revolutionary. And so I see myself as a social entrepreneur. I've spent my time in federal government, local government, now serving on our DC Food Policy Council, chairing food and nutrition and health. But for me, it's understanding that beyond titles and identity, who are you, and will you do the work beyond paycheck and beyond what is given to you? And so the passion for me in doing the work of Wanda was, where is a space that you don't see, and will you create it in order to give others permission to be who they are? And that is why this work is really ministry. It's really part of building a movement. And the earth plays a critical role in this because she is the bearer of our nourishment, and we are women to protect that Mother Earth, just like we must protect our wounds as we just come off celebrating Black Maternal Health Week. They're all interconnected. And so that's the energy, the will, now being a plant mom and using times of COVID to hear the message of what radical changes we must do at an individual level and at an institutional level in order for us to sustain life and sustain life that is mirrored through the public will, the political will, through fighting for a better planet every day.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for this rich dialogue, and I'll let Bretta take over with some of the participant questions now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have some good questions from our audience. I'm going to start with some of the career-related ones. Since you guys had talked a little bit about what kind of educational opportunities you had that maybe led you into this career path, do you have any recommendations for actually finding these opportunities in the workplace that you could share with the audience?
Well, one thing I will say is when, you know, I've talked with different students or you know, young people on the beginning of their career, is that it's really hard to find a job title or job description that has it all wrapped up. That really, and I think if you speak with most of us on the panel today, found a role that we then applied our values and our passion around the intersection of environmental health, sustainability, equity, and so on. So I think I would be less worried about looking for that right job description or right title, and looking at the type of organization where you feel you will have flexibility and room to be creative, to grow, to bring your expertise and your passions forward, because those are the organizations that will lend themselves well to bringing whatever you want to bring to that job, that role, and to the table.
And I did that, Stacia. That's actually exactly what I did. I actually knew I was kind of stalking the Center for Livable Future. So it was kind of one night in the probably late, and I saw that they had a posting. It really didn't matter. I was like, I am going to apply, because I knew that's the organization I wanted to work for. I wanted the academics. I wanted, you know what I mean? And I wanted all of that in there. So I just was, you know, I can't say I was waiting, but I was looking. I kept checking to see if an opportunity presented itself. It wasn't the title, because you really don't know what you're going to be doing until you get there. Let's be clear. You never do know. But I did know what I wanted to do. And it appeared that the individuals there, the colleagues, were very open to putting your own, you know, your own spin on it. So that was very nice. That was very nice.
Yeah, and to echo what everyone just said, it's not going to be in the job title. It's not going to be in your job description. So I wouldn't waste, you know, put in so much time and energy looking for that perfect title and job description. And it also, you know, no matter what setting you're working in, it can be just as a matter of voicing your interest in sustainability. You know, admittedly, I had no education or experience in sustainability. I didn't really receive that kind of curriculum when I was an intern. It was just, you know, out of love of food and having even greater appreciation for food when I understood the farm to fork process. And so I started vocalizing that a little bit more when I was in Chartwells and with my team. And while they had these sustainability initiatives going on, it wasn't really an expectation for me to be involved with that, but I vocalized that I want to be involved with it. I want to be part of the, you know, the portion where we are educating our students on the importance of this and how it ties in health and wellness. And so then after that, I was able to carry it on to my current position with RA. So, and all I did was vocalize my interest, really. Yeah.
Awesome. One of our other questions, specifically related, I think, to food service would be, how do you persuade your company to maybe buy the more expensive product that's more sustainable? And how do you make that case to them to purchase that product?
I'd be happy to take that one, because I have to do it every single day. It's, you know, in larger corporations, we're always talking about ROI. So you're trying to figure out what that return on investment is. What does that benefit back to the organization? And I think one of the most challenging things as someone who's, you know, really passionate about both wellness and sustainability is that what makes perfectly logical sense to me, it's hard to translate to, you know, a financial officer who is looking at the spreadsheet and the bottom line, and that's what they're focused on. So you have to think about different ways to approach your argument. And So one of the things is that we've been really leveraging a lot lately is both what our consumers are asking for and requiring, what our clients are expecting of us, and then really taking a hard look at what those decisions mean for our overall brand equity. So yes, we might be spending a little bit more on something right now at this moment in time, but overall that strengthens our brand, it strengthens our positioning, it helps us win new business, it helps us retain business, and all of that really speaks to that financial piece that those people who, again, they're doing their jobs, they're looking at the financial health of the organization. But sometimes you have to really think about different ways to present that argument and make sure that you can get across to them that it's not just the right thing to do because it's the right thing to do, but present them with that case that from a brand positioning, from a return on investment, they're going to actually see some incentive from that.
That's fantastic and really helpful. Eecole, do you have something you want to share?
I can jump in just real quick. I would say if there are a few strategies, the balanced menu strategy is one where you decrease portion size of meat, for instance, and you increase the quality. You buy less meat in general, but you increase the quality and spend the money there. Or you look at the labor factor and you you streamline a bunch of other products. You get rid of the 12 flavors of Gatorade that you have at in your patient service, and you say, okay, with the saved money, we're going to buy this one organic thing, or so you have to get creative with the budgeting, but I do think that it's really possible.
Awesome. Tambra, I have a question for you. As a sustainable entrepreneur, what kind of skills do you feel like people need to have to really thrive in the world that you work in?
Yeah, thank you so much for this. Currently, I'm in a Rising Leader program, and we just had this conversation about what are the kind of skills needed. And I would say some of the things that came out of this conversation, the ability to pivot. It is vital to be able to be like a ballerina is the best way to sum it up. The ability to have resiliency, to be resourceful, to be able to be creative, and to be able to understand that your voice matters. Part of the path that I've seen, one, I'm a lover of history, lover of books, lover of cultural mythology, the work of Joseph Campbell. And when I think about A Hero with a Thousand Faces, it really is a great overlay to think about food and the kind of criteria needed in order to lead. That the change first begins within you in order to begin the change in your community. And so as we look to take on a new fellow, we will be laying out a new foundation of how to reimagine feminine leadership in food in a way that values the very thing that this patriarchal society denies you, that you have all that you need already within. And so we understand that in order to have that vision to be victorious in this work, you must value you must embrace your vulnerabilities, you must be able to understand the power of your voice and set the value system that you will not compromise in order to support your village. That is what we see through Rhonda's lens.
It's amazing. And it sounds like there has to be a lot of creativity there in pivoting. And we had some other questions related to how is creativity incorporated into your practice in your various roles? Does anyone want to share about that? Go ahead, Tambra.
Okay, yeah. So the reason why this question matters to me is before health, I was a lover of art, music, was in band, did all the competitions and honor bands, all that. And so for me, when Katrina hit and I went down to do work in the Gulfport area, it was an awakening of my spirit of understanding that when you're in a dead end, I won't say a dead end job, I won't say that, because I truly did want to work in government and work with the Surgeon General and all those folks. But the reality is creativity is something that is so part of intuition and wisdom, and it can be something that seems as if it's only for artists, but the reality is we are an extension of the creator. We are creations, and therefore creativity lies within us. And so we are natural born creators. So I find that food can be an extension of that creativity, but at the same time, it is an opportunity to unlock that genius that is already within you that has lied dormant. So my ability and desire to express creativity is really the secret sauce in the kitchen. It is what allows me to create that unique value proposition in business. It allows me to focus and have blinders and to understand that there is only one me and there is no competition. There's only collaboration in this community. So I see that creativity is within you. You just need to take time, cultivate it, whether it's from gardening to writing to poetry, whatever you need to create that catalytic converter to churn and move you forward.
Amazing. Yeah, I think there's a good opportunity for everyone to really leverage their creativity to make them more marketable and really just propel the mission that we have in our sustainability space. When it comes to our food system, someone had asked a question about meat consumption and how you might, if anyone here has any perspectives on recommending meat for people to eat, whether it's, sorry, I'm not phrasing this well, but I'm trying to paraphrase a little bit, but not consuming beef at all if it's not organic or not grass-fed, given the fact that it's not affordable and accessible? Or do you think that there's balance in, and how do we kind of bridge that gap between accessibility of sustainable foods and health and necessity? Anyone? Laura, do you have any perspectives on that?
Well, gosh, it's so hard as a dietitian to label any food as completely bad. I just don't like putting food into buckets like that. There are healthier foods, there are more fun foods, there are, foods for certain celebrations and events. So I think you have to reflect and start with where you are. What's part of your value system? If grass-fed organic beef is super important to you, but it's just not within reach at the moment, then choose not to eat beef. But I would never tell someone. I'm just really sensitive about criticizing the way that people do choose to eat, because it is such a personal thing, and we eat for so many different reasons. Tambra, I think you've kind of touched on this. It nourishes our souls as much as it nourishes our bodies, and sometimes we make decisions to nourish one thing over another. I try not to put things in buckets, and I don't like the idea of making people feel guilty for their food choices and where they are. I mean, there's too many other pressures to consider in life that feeling guilt over making one meal choice over another is just, it's not time well spent in my opinion.
Yeah, and I did that. Oh, sorry, Stacia, you're gonna.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I did that. I was smiling when I said that. I don't believe in telling people what to eat, period. Mm-hmm. I think until you know their story, until you know what they have, what they can afford, it's not for you to tell them. But I think if someone comes to you and said, I don't want to eat beef, then can you help me? That's a different type of conversation. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we get kind of caught up in the whole idea of, I want to eat grass-fed, I want to eat this, I want to eat that, but what do you have? Is what you have, what you're able to afford, is conventional, regular, then it's okay, but know how to prepare it in a way that's healthy and safe for you. And I will tell you one thing that really drove me batty was when COVID started. I was doing an interview, I believe, with Civil Elites, and we were talking, and I think a colleague told me on social media, Blacks were likely, more affected, die from the virus. And people were saying on Facebook, Well, it's because they eat too much fried chicken, right? Talking about a missed opportunity there, right? As for education and ignorance, it's not really that. I mean, we all know that's not that. There's a lot of things that comes, that comes with those choices. I am with Laura when you say that you do what's best for you. You do what's best for your family. We eat for different reasons. And if you do have the money to go buy that grass-fed burger, go for it. But if you don't, you just want a burger, have your burger, and that'd be that. And just know, looking at the My Plate method, looking at sustainability is more than meat. There is a lot of way we can contribute to that, right? And I think you have to think about the whole package. But I'll end with saying, yes, Americans consume too much meat. We need to figure out how to deal with that. And but we have personally different ways to do that. Stacia.
Yeah, and I'll add, it's almost like the question I want to shift a little bit is that as dietitians, we're trained to think about what I'm eating at that point. And if we're thinking about eating grass-fed beef or whatever, what's the reason? Maybe it's because we want to support that system. Well, the whole system is inherently skewed. And if you want to support that system, there's many ways to do that. Yes, you can purchase this particular meat that has these criteria and was produced in a certain way. You can also advocate and use your voice if you can't make that purchase right now. You can also join with others or advocate for your large institutions who can make those decisions, make it more accessible for the community in other ways. So there's a lot of ways to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve versus just looking at what you have to spend in your pocket. And I'd like to challenge, us as dietitians to think beyond just that endpoint and look at the system and where it's broken and how we can address the system.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your perspectives. I think that's all the time that we have for questions today. So we're going to go ahead and close it out, but I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And I will throw it back over to Mary and Eitan for just a second.
Thank you so much. Wow, we could just talk all night, and I feel like I want to go out to dinner with all of you and just talk shop over a delicious, nutritious, and sustainably grown meal. So we don't have much time left, but I wanted to at least make people aware of the fact that we also have a presentation that I can make sure that everyone is sent, and also that we will record and put up on our website. And this is essentially to let you know that, wow, we talked to 6 amazing women tonight who are doing incredible work, but there are dozens and hundreds of dietitians and nutrition professionals who are doing incredible things, entrepreneurial things, working in different landscapes, talking about sustainability in everything they do, whether that's patient interactions or talks. There are researchers. These are those 2 papers, people working with Union of Concerned Scientists, keep on going here. Winona Bynum, who works with the Detroit Food Policy Council, and Chris Vogliano, who's working with the Solomon Islands, trying to increase biodiversity in their diets. And Fallon Bader, who actually runs a kitchen hosting cooking classes on local farms. So there's a huge way that all of you can get involved. And if you are somebody who is working in the dietetics or nutrition field and you want to be featured in this PowerPoint presentation where we're trying to get people to understand the many ways that you can be involved in sustainability and nutrition, send us your headshot, send us 3 bullet points about your role in sustainability to this email address, and we'd love to feature you as well so that we can keep on spreading the word about the possibilities that are out there. Thank you.
If anyone is looking into getting involved with the PHC, please don't forget to complete the survey in the chat. You can join our Facebook group and follow us on Instagram at the Planetary Health Collective. We're always sharing different events that are coming up regarding sustainability and how we can bridge, our systems with nutrition. If there's some collaboration you have in mind, please feel free to reach out to us at hello@planetaryhealthcollective.org. You can always apply to be on our leadership team or write for us. And we're looking for some really high quality and diverse perspectives in the nutrition and sustainability space. And if you're interested in volunteering, please don't hesitate to reach out. I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. And I believe if you haven't already, go check out the Conscious Merchants website. They have a ton of different sustainable products, home goods, and not only are they safer for the planet, but they're also safer for your body. And they do have a really cool like refill bar. So if you're in the Colorado area, they have a location in Denver and a location in Louisville, and you can bring in products and refill them. So, you know, we're cutting down on waste there. And they'll also do delivery to your house if you're in Colorado as well. So definitely check that out and use the code PHC10 to get 10% off. And I just want to thank our panelists again and everyone who has registered and everyone who's participated today. We could not do this without you, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Fabulous. And yeah, this is Item just chiming in. I just want to say one final thank you to all of our fantastic panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable perspectives. It's you guys that really make this a valuable space and help us to encourage people who are new to just enter into this space by making it so empowering and accessible for everyone and not just the few. So thank you all so much for joining us. And we look forward to reconnecting with you guys at one of our future webinars. Thanks again, everyone. Take good care.
Bye-bye.